The engine exploded, not literally, but close enough. Smoke poured from the prototype's core, thick and black, filling the glass-walled boardroom with the bitter smell of burning circuits. Alarms screamed. Investors jerked backward in their leather chairs. A woman in a Chanel suit covered her mouth, coughing. Marissa Kade stood at the head of the conference table, her jaw locked tight enough to crack teeth. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She just stared at the smoking wreckage of Avalon Dynamics' billion-dollar future. "Somebody," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a scalpel, "better tell me what the hell just happened." Her lead engineer, a sweating man named Gerald, stammered something about voltage regulators and supply chain delays. Marissa's eyes went cold. She didn't want excuses. She wanted solutions. And she wanted them 5 minutes ago. The boardroom door opened. A janitor stepped inside, pushing a cart loaded with cleaning supplies. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a gray uniform that had seen better days. His name was Rowan Hale, though nobody in that room knew it. To them, he was invisible. A ghost in work boots. "Comment the country you're from." Marissa's gaze snapped to him. "Wrong room." Rowan stopped. His eyes moved past her, past the panicking executives, and landed on the smoking engine. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or memory. "I can fix it," he said. The room went silent. Then someone laughed. A sharp, disbelieving bark of sound. Then another. Soon the entire boardroom was filled with the sound of executives laughing at the janitor who thought he could save their company. Marissa didn't laugh. She tilted her head, studying him like a bug under glass. "You fix an engine that 8 MIT graduates can't figure out?" "Yes." Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Tell you what, hero." She leaned against the table, crossing her arms. "You fix this engine in 1 hour, and I'll marry you." The laughter doubled. Someone wheezed. Gerald wiped tears from his eyes. Rowan didn't smile, didn't flinch. He just nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Deal." The laughter died like someone had cut its throat. Marissa's smile faltered. She'd expected him to stutter, to blush, to realize he'd walked into something way over his head. But the man standing in front of her didn't look embarrassed. He looked focused, determined, like he'd just accepted a challenge he'd been waiting years to face. Security guards shifted near the door, unsure if they should intervene. Investors exchanged glances, half entertained, half horrified. Someone in the back pulled out their phone and started filming. Marissa straightened, her expression unreadable. "Clock starts now." Rowan walked toward the engine. Nobody stopped him. The room held its breath, watching a janitor approach a $1 million piece of technology like it was an old friend. He knelt beside it, ignoring the smoke still curling from its vents. His fingers hovered over the casing for just a moment. Then he opened it. The countdown began. Rowan's hands moved across the engine's interior like he was reading Braille. Wires tangled in complex patterns, circuit boards layered on top of each other, cooling tubes snaking through metal like veins. Gerald stepped closer, arms crossed. "You even know what you're looking at?" Rowan didn't answer. His eyes traced a wire from the fuel injector to the main control board. Something was wrong with the connection. Not broken, misaligned. Like someone had forced a puzzle piece into the wrong spot. Behind him, the engineers whispered, "He's gonna blow the whole system. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Someone stop him before he makes it worse." But nobody moved. They just watched, transfixed, as the janitor worked with the steady precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. An investor leaned toward Marissa. "Is this a publicity stunt?" "No," she said, though she wasn't entirely sure herself. Across the room, Dorian Vale stood with his back against the window, watching Rowan with narrowed eyes. Dorian was Avalon's COO. Sharp suit, sharper smile, and ambition that could cut glass. He'd spent years climbing to the top of this company, and now some janitor was threatening to upstage him in front of the people who mattered most. He cleared his throat. "If he touches the wrong component, the entire system fries. We're talking millions in damage." Several investors stiffened. Marissa shot Dorian a look that could melt steel. Rowan ignored them all. He was focused on a specific section near the engine's core, a cluster of wires connected to a small black box. The control module. He'd seen this design before, years ago, in another life. His hands paused. The room noticed. "What's wrong?" Gerald asked, a hint of triumph in his voice. "Hit a wall?" Rowan's jaw tightened. He wasn't hitting a wall. He was staring at a ghost. This engine wasn't just similar to something he'd worked on. It was based on his design, the one that had been stolen from him 3 years ago. Someone in the back of the room was live streaming. The view count climbed. Comments flooded in. "He's crazy. This is gonna be epic. He's about to get fired." Marissa checked her watch. 45 minutes left. Rowan's fingers moved again, faster now. He disconnected a wire, rerouted it through a secondary junction, then reconnected it to a port the engineers had overlooked entirely. His movements were deliberate, confident, like muscle memory kicking in after years of sleep. But then he stopped again. His hand hovered over a small red switch near the engine's base, the emergency bypass. Flipping it would allow him to access the engine's core systems, but it would also disable every safety protocol. One wrong move after that, and the entire thing would go up in flames. Gerald saw where Rowan was looking. "Don't. You flip that switch. You're playing with fire." Rowan's eyes met his. "I know." His hand moved toward the switch. Marissa's breath caught. And then Rowan flipped it. The engine's display screen went dark. Every warning light shut off. The room plunged into a tense, suffocating silence. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Rowan pulled a screwdriver from his cart, one he'd been carrying in his back pocket for years, and opened the engine's main control panel. Inside was a mess of wiring and circuit boards, but his eyes went straight to one specific chip near the center, the calibration processor. He pulled it out, examined it under the fluorescent lights, then set it aside. From his cart, he grabbed a small toolkit, one that definitely didn't belong to a janitor. He pulled out a replacement chip, old and worn, wrapped in static-proof plastic. Dorian's eyes went wide. Where did he get that? Rowan didn't answer. He slotted the chip into place, reconnected the wiring, and closed the panel. Then he reached for the red switch again and flipped it back. The engine's display flickered, once, twice. Then it went completely black. Everyone stared. The countdown clock hit 30 minutes. Rowan stood, wiping his hands on his uniform. His face was unreadable. Marissa stepped forward. "Did you—" The engine sparked, violently. A burst of white light shot from the core, followed by a plume of thick gray smoke. The room erupted in shouts. "Get back!" Gerald yelled. Investors scrambled toward the door. Security moved in. Someone activated the fire alarm, but Rowan didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the smoking engine, his jaw clenched tight. The smoke cleared. The engine sat silent. Dead. Dorian laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. There it is, the janitor's masterpiece. Marissa's expression was unreadable. Disappointment? Relief? She couldn't tell. Rowan turned to face the room. His voice was quiet, steady. "It's not done yet." "Not done?" Dorian stepped forward, his voice dripping with mockery. "You just killed a multi-million-dollar prototype. You're finished." Rowan met his gaze. The system needed to reset. Give it 30 seconds. 30 seconds? Gerald scoffed. There's nothing left to reset. But Rowan didn't argue. He just watched the engine's display screen, his eyes locked on the dark glass. Marissa checked her watch. 28 minutes left. The room buzzed with whispers. Phones recorded. Investors debated whether to leave or stay. Security hovered near Rowan, waiting for orders. And then, a single green light flickered on the display screen. The room went silent. The light held steady. 1 second, 2, 3. Then the engine's cooling fans whirred to life. The sound was faint at first, a low hum, almost too quiet to hear. But it grew. Steady. Controlled. The engine's internal systems coming online one by one. Rowan's shoulders relaxed, just slightly. Marissa stepped closer, her eyes locked on the display screen. Numbers scrolled across it. Diagnostic codes, system checks, temperature readings. Everything was stabilizing, but the engine itself still hadn't started. Dorian crossed his arms. So it's awake. Big deal. Can it actually run? Rowan knelt beside the engine again. This time, he didn't open any panels. He just placed his hand on the casing, feeling the vibrations. His eyes closed. For a moment, he wasn't in a corporate boardroom surrounded by executives and cameras. He was somewhere else. A cramped garage, grease under his fingernails. His father standing beside him, showing him how to listen to an engine, not with his ears, but with his hands. Engines talk, son. You just gotta know their language. His wife's voice echoed in his memory, soft, tired. Don't stop creating, Rowan. Ivy needs to see your gift. Then another memory, harsher, his former partner, smiling as he signed away the rights to their invention. Business is business, Rowan. You should have read the fine print. The courtroom, the debt, the funeral, the collapse of everything he'd built. He opened his eyes. The boardroom snapped back into focus. Rowan stood and turned to Marissa. Start it. She blinked. What? The ignition. Turn it on. Gerald stepped between them. Absolutely not. If this thing blows, we're liable. It won't blow, Rowan said. His voice was calm, certain. Turn it on. Marissa studied him. Really studied him. For the first time, she saw past the janitor's uniform, past the dirt-streaked hands and worn boots. She saw something else. Confidence. Experience. A man who knew exactly what he was doing. She reached for the ignition switch. Dorian's voice cut through the room. Marissa, don't. You're risking everything on the word of a what? Rowan turned to face him. Say it. Dorian's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't finish the sentence. Marissa's finger hovered over the switch. The room held its breath. Phones recorded. Investors leaned forward. She pressed it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the engine roared to life. Not sputtered, not coughed. Roared. A deep, powerful sound that filled the entire boardroom. The kind of sound that made your chest vibrate. The kind of sound that said strength, precision, control. The display screen lit up with perfect green readings. Temperature stable. Fuel efficiency at optimal levels. No errors, no warnings. Just a flawless, purring machine. The room exploded into shocked silence. Gerald's mouth hung open. Investors stared. Even Dorian looked rattled. Marissa's eyes went wide. She stepped closer to the engine, watching the readouts. This is running 40% more efficiently than before. 42%, Rowan corrected quietly. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. How? He didn't answer. He just looked at the engine, the machine he had helped design 3 years ago, in another life. The machine that had been stolen from him. The machine that had destroyed his career. And now he just fixed it. In front of everyone. An investor stood, clapping slowly. Then another joined, then another. Soon the entire room was applauding, not because they liked Rowan, but because they just witnessed something impossible. Dorian didn't clap. He just stared at Rowan, his jaw clenched tight, his eyes burning with something dark and dangerous. Marissa extended her hand. I don't know who you are, but I owe you an apology. Rowan shook her hand. His grip was firm, steady. Rowan Hale. Marissa Kade. I know. She smiled, a real smile this time. I also owe you a job, senior systems engineer, effective immediately. The room erupted again, this time with gasps, whispers, shock. But before Rowan could respond, Dorian's voice rang out. Hold on. He stepped forward, his expression hard. I know this man. The room went silent. Marissa turned. Excuse me? Dorian pointed at Rowan. His name is Rowan Hale, and 3 years ago, he was sued for intellectual property theft. The words landed like a grenade. Every head in the room turned toward Rowan. Phones angled toward him. Cameras zoomed in. Investors exchanged glances, suspicious now, cautious. Marissa's smile vanished. Is that true? Rowan's jaw tightened. He didn't answer immediately. Not because he was hiding, but because the truth was complicated, messy. The kind of story people didn't want to hear when they'd already made up their minds. Yes, he said finally, I was sued. Dorian's smile widened. There it is. He's a disgraced engineer, stole a design from his partner and tried to pass it off as his own. Lost the case, lost his career, and now he's here pretending to be some kind of hero. Murmurs rippled through the room. Gerald crossed his arms, vindicated. An investor near the back shook his head, already writing Rowan off. Marissa's eyes stayed locked on Rowan. Did you steal it? No. Then why did you lose? Rowan's hands curled into fists at his sides. Because I couldn't afford a lawyer, because my wife had just died, because I was trying to keep my daughter fed and a roof over her head, and because my partner knew I didn't have the money to fight him. The room went quiet. Not the excited kind of quiet, the uncomfortable kind. The kind that happens when people realize they've been entertained by someone else's pain. Dorian's expression hardened. He wasn't done. Oh, please. The dead wife story. How convenient. Something shifted in the room. Even the investors looked uncomfortable now. Gerald glanced away. Security guards stiffened. Marissa's voice went ice cold. Dorian, that's enough. But Dorian didn't stop. He stepped closer to Rowan, his voice dropping. You're a fraud, a con artist, and you just manipulated your way into this company with some flashy repair job. But I see you, and I'm going to make sure everyone else does too. Rowan didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight, breathing slow and controlled, like a man who'd learned a long time ago that anger didn't solve anything. Marissa stepped between them. Dorian, my office, now. He didn't move. You can't seriously be considering hiring him. I said, my office, now. For a moment, Dorian just stared at her. Then he smiled. Thin, sharp, dangerous. Fine, but this isn't over. He walked toward the door, pausing just long enough to glance back at Rowan. Enjoy your 15 minutes. They won't last. The door slammed behind him. The room stayed silent, awkward. People avoided Rowan's eyes. Investors shuffled papers. Gerald pretended to check his phone. Marissa turned back to Rowan. Her expression was softer now, not pitying, just human. I'm sorry, that was out of line. It's fine. It's not. She hesitated. But I need to know the truth. All of it. Rowan looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time since walking into that boardroom, he let his guard drop, just a little. The engine you just saw me fix, he said quietly. I designed it 3 years ago. My partner and I were going to patent it together, but when my wife got sick, I had to step away. And he filed the patent without me, took all the credit, all the money, and when I tried to fight it, he buried me in legal fees until I had nothing left. Marissa's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. Understanding, maybe, or respect. And now you're a janitor, she said. Now I'm a father, Rowan corrected. The janitor job pays for my daughter's school, her food, her future. I don't care what anyone thinks of me as long as she's okay. The room stayed silent. Then one of the investors, an older man in a gray suit, stood. Miss Kade, if you don't hire this man today, I will. Another investor nodded. Agreed. Marissa's lips curved into a small smile. I already offered him the job. She turned back to Rowan. But I need to know, are you in? Or are you walking away? Rowan thought of Ivy, her bright eyes, her laughter, the way she'd hugged him that morning and told him she was proud of him, even though he was just a janitor. I'm in, he said. Marissa extended her hand again. This time, when they shook, it felt different, like a promise, like a partnership. But as the applause started again, as investors congratulated him and engineers reluctantly shook his hand, Rowan noticed something. Dorian was gone, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a warning bell rang. This wasn't over. The rest of the meeting blurred. Investors asked Rowan questions he answered on autopilot. Engineers scribbled notes, suddenly interested in his methods. Marissa stood beside him, fielding logistics, contracts, salary negotiations, start dates. But Rowan's mind was somewhere else, on Ivy. On the school pickup, he'd almost missed rushing here. On the tiny apartment they shared, where the heat only worked half the time, and the walls were so thin they could hear their neighbors' arguments every night. On the life he'd built from scraps, the one he'd fought so hard to protect. And now, somehow, it was changing. The meeting ended. People filtered out, still talking, still filming. Marissa pulled Rowan aside near the windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. You start Monday, she said. Full benefits. Salary will finalize tomorrow. And I'm assigning you to lead the next phase of engine development. Rowan blinked. Lead? You just fixed something 8 engineers couldn't. I'd be an idiot not to put you in charge. He didn't know what to say. 3 hours ago, he'd been mopping floors. Now he was leading a team. Thank you, he managed. Marissa studied him. Don't thank me yet. Dorian's not going to let this go. He's going to dig into your past, try to discredit you, maybe even sabotage your work. You need to be ready for that. Rowan's jaw tightened. I've been dealing with people like Dorian my whole life. Good, she paused. But if you need help, legal, professional, whatever, you come to me. Understood? He nodded. She turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing, that marriage bet? Rowan's eyes widened slightly. Marissa smiled, small, almost playful. Don't worry, I'm not holding you to it, but she tilted her head. If you'd actually said yes, I might have been impressed. Before he could respond, she walked away, heels clicking against the marble floor. Rowan stood alone by the window, staring out at the city. His reflection stared back, a man in a janitor's uniform who'd just been offered a second chance. But second chances came with risks. And somewhere in this building, Dorian Vale was already planning his next move. Rowan pulled out his phone. One missed call from Ivy's school. His heart dropped. He called back immediately. Mr. Hale, the receptionist said. Ivy's fine, but she's been asking for you. Can you pick her up soon? I'm on my way. He hung up and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of Dorian across the lobby, phone pressed to his ear, eyes locked on Rowan, watching, waiting. The elevator descended, and Rowan realized something. He'd just won the battle. But the war was only beginning. The system crashed. Rowan stared at the black screen, his fingers frozen above the keyboard. Numbers had been scrolling just seconds ago. Diagnostic codes, calibration sequences, engine performance metrics. Now, there was nothing. Just his reflection in dead glass. Around him, the engineering lab hummed with Monday morning energy. His first day as senior systems engineer. His new team, 3 people who'd been engineers longer than he'd been alive, watched from their workstations. Waiting. Judging. Problem? Gerald asked from across the room. His tone said he hoped the answer was yes. Rowan's jaw tightened. No, but it was a lie. Because the system shouldn't have crashed. Not like this. Not when he'd triple-checked every line of code before initiating the test sequence. He rebooted the console. The screen flickered. Warning messages flooded the display. Corrupted files, missing data, system errors that made no sense. Someone had tampered with his work. His eyes went to the security camera in the corner, then to the timestamp on the corrupted files. 3 a.m., hours before he'd arrived. Hours before anyone should have been in this lab. Gerald stood, walking over with his coffee mug. Need help? No. Because if you can't handle the position... I said no. Rowan's voice came out sharper than intended. He didn't have time for games. The launch presentation was in 4 days. Investors were flying in from 3 countries. And his engine, the one he'd fixed, the one running at 42% efficiency, needed to be perfect. He pulled up the backup files, started rebuilding the calibration algorithm from scratch. His fingers moved fast, pulling code from memory, rewriting sequences he had designed years ago. But something was wrong. The backup files were corrupted too. Not all of them, just enough to make his job nearly impossible. This wasn't an accident. Gerald sipped his coffee, watching. Heard Dorian's been asking questions about you. Background checks, legal history, that kind of thing. Rowan didn't look up. Let him ask. Just saying. Man like that doesn't forget when someone makes him look bad. The words hung in the air. Rowan kept typing, kept rebuilding, kept fighting against code that fought back. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His daughter's face flashed in his mind. Ivy, waiting for him to pick her up after school, excited to hear about his first day. He couldn't fail. Not again. The console beeped. A new error message appeared, this one worse than the others. Critical system failure. Complete restart required. Rowan slammed his hand on the desk. The room went quiet. Then the lab door opened. Marissa walked in, tablet in hand, heels clicking against tile. Her eyes swept the room, landing on Rowan. Status update? He met her gaze. We have a problem. Her expression didn't change. Fix it. Someone sabotaged the system. That got her attention. Explain. Rowan pulled up the corrupted files, showed her the timestamps, the suspicious deletions. This happened in the middle of the night. Someone with building access came in here and destroyed 3 weeks of work. Marissa's eyes narrowed. She turned to Gerald. Who has lab access? Senior staff, engineering leads, executive team. Get me security footage, now. Gerald hesitated, just for a second, but Rowan saw it. Marissa saw it too. Is there a problem? No, ma'am, I'll pull it up. She turned back to Rowan. How long to rebuild? 48 hours, maybe less. You have 24. That's not 24 hours, Rowan, or we cancel the launch. She walked toward the door, then stopped. And whoever did this, they're fired. I don't care who it is. The door closed behind her. Rowan turned back to his console. The black screen stared back at him, mocking, daring him to quit. He cracked his knuckles. 24 hours. He'd built engines from scraps before. He could do this. But then his phone buzzed. A text from Ivy's school. She's asking when you're picking her up. She seems upset. Rowan's chest tightened. He checked the time. 3 p.m. He'd promised to be there by 3:30. If he left now, he could make it. But if he left now, he'd lose hours he couldn't afford to lose. His finger hovered over the reply button. Then Gerald's voice cut through the lab. Rowan, you're going to want to see this. Security footage played on the main screen. Timestamp, 2:47 a.m. A figure entered the lab, moving with purpose. They wore a hoodie, face obscured, but their movements were confident, familiar. They walked straight to Rowan's workstation, plugged in a USB drive, typed for 8 minutes, then left. The footage ended. Can you enhance the face? Marissa asked, appearing in the doorway again. Already tried, Gerald said. Whoever it was knew where the cameras were, kept their head down the whole time. But Rowan wasn't looking at the face. He was looking at the hands, the way they moved across the keyboard, fast, efficient. The way someone who'd been typing for decades would move. He knew those hands. It was Dorian, he said quietly. The room went silent. Marissa stepped closer. You're sure? Look at the watch, left wrist. That's a Patek Philippe, custom engraved. Dorian wears one exactly like it. Gerald zoomed in. There it was, a flash of silver on the figure's wrist, just visible under the hoodie sleeve. Marissa's expression went cold, hard, dangerous. Find him! Dorian wasn't in his office, not in the executive lounge, not in the parking garage. His assistant claimed he'd called in sick, first time in 6 years. Marissa stood in the security office, arms crossed, watching footage loop on 3 different screens. Her jaw was tight enough to crack. He knew we'd figure it out, she said. The head of security, a woman named Keisha, nodded. He's probably halfway to another state by now. Then find him. I don't care if you have to track his credit cards. Find him. Back in the engineering lab, Rowan worked. His fingers moved across the keyboard like a pianist playing a concerto. Code scrolled, numbers aligned. The system began rebuilding itself, piece by piece. But his mind wasn't on the code. It was on Dorian, on the sabotage, on the fact that someone had tried to destroy his second chance before it even started. His phone buzzed again. Another text from the school. Mr. Hale, Ivy is still waiting. Please confirm pickup time. Rowan's hands froze. His chest felt tight. He looked at the clock, 4:15. He'd missed pickup. Again. He called the school. The receptionist's voice was patient but strained. Mr. Hale, Ivy's been waiting for over an hour. She's pretty upset. I know. I'm sorry. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She said you promised you'd be on time. The words hit like a punch. Because she was right. He had promised. This morning, over cereal, he'd looked her in the eyes and said, I'll be there at 3:30, I promise. And he'd broken it. I'll be there soon, he said, and hung up. He saved his work, grabbed his jacket, and headed for the door. But then the lab door opened. Marissa walked in, phone pressed to her ear, her expression dark. She hung up and turned to Rowan. We found Dorian. Where? His lake house, 2 hours outside the city. He's barricaded himself inside. Won't answer calls, won't answer the door. Rowan's stomach dropped. What's he planning? I don't know. But he sent an email to the board 20 minutes ago. Claims you're the one who sabotaged the system. Says he has proof. The room went cold. That's impossible, Rowan said. I know that. But the board doesn't. They're calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. And if Dorian can convince them you're a liability. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Rowan would lose everything. Again. His phone buzzed. The school calling this time. He sent it to voicemail. What do you need from me? He asked. Marissa studied him. I need you to finish that engine. I need you to prove Dorian wrong, and I need you to do it in the next 18 hours. I have to pick up my daughter. I know. Her voice softened, just slightly. Go get her. Bring her here if you have to. But Rowan, this is it. If we don't have that engine ready tomorrow, Dorian wins, and you're done. He nodded, grabbed his keys, headed for the elevator. But as the doors closed, his reflection stared back at him. A man torn between two worlds, a father, an engineer, a man trying to rebuild a life that kept getting ripped apart. The elevator descended, and somewhere in the building, a countdown clock ticked. 18 hours. Rowan arrived at Ivy's school 30 minutes late. She sat on the bench outside the main office, backpack clutched to her chest, eyes red. When she saw him, she didn't smile. You promised, she said quietly. Rowan knelt in front of her. I know. I'm sorry, baby. Work got... You always say that. The words cut deeper than any insult Dorian could throw. Because she was right. He always said that. Back when he was an engineer before. Back when he missed dinners and school plays and bedtime stories because he was chasing the next big project. And now he was doing it again. I'm trying, Ivy. I'm trying to make things better for us. She looked at him with eyes too old for a 7-year-old. I don't want things to be better. I just want you. Rowan's throat tightened. He pulled her into a hug, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. Because she was. They drove back to Avalon in silence. Ivy stared out the window, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Rowan's hands gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing through code and calibration sequences, and the 18 hours he had left. When they arrived, the building was mostly empty. Security let them through. Ivy followed Rowan to the engineering lab, her small hand in his. He set up a chair beside his workstation, gave her his tablet loaded with games and videos. I need to work for a little while, okay? She nodded, didn't argue, just curled up in the chair, rabbit in her lap, and watched him. Rowan turned back to the console. The system was half rebuilt, but the most critical part, the calibration algorithm, was still corrupted. He needed to rewrite it from scratch, and he needed to do it perfectly. His fingers moved, code appeared, numbers aligned, but then the system froze again. Rowan's breath caught. A new message appeared on the screen. Not an error, a note, typed in plain text. You can't win, Rowan. I've already made sure of that. D. Rowan's hands trembled, not from fear, from rage, pure white-hot rage that burned through every careful wall he'd built over 3 years of scraping by. Staying quiet, keeping his head down, Dorian had reached into his system remotely, planted a message like a bomb, and somewhere, probably in that lake house 2 hours away, he was watching, waiting. Daddy? Ivy's voice was small, worried. Rowan forced his hands to steady, forced his voice to stay calm. It's okay, baby, just a glitch. But it wasn't a glitch, it was war. He pulled up the system's access logs, traced the intrusion back through firewalls and security protocols, found the back door Dorian had planted, a piece of code so elegant, so carefully hidden, that most engineers would have missed it entirely. But Rowan wasn't most engineers. He isolated the back door, quarantined it. Then he did something Dorian wouldn't expect. He left it open, but he reversed it. Now, instead of Dorian watching Rowan's system, Rowan could watch Dorian's. His screen split. On one side, his engine code. On the other, a live feed into Dorian's personal network. Files, emails, documents Dorian thought were private. Rowan's eyes scanned through them. Most were useless. Corporate memos, financial reports, meeting notes. But then he found something. A folder labeled Insurance. He opened it. Inside were files, dozens of them. Screenshots of Rowan's old lawsuit, Fabricated documents claiming Rowan had stolen designs from Avalon, fake testimonies from engineers who'd supposedly witnessed Rowan sabotaging equipment. Dorian had been planning this for days, maybe longer, building a case designed to destroy Rowan's credibility beyond repair. But there was something else in the folder, something Dorian hadn't meant to leave there, a contract. Between Dorian and Rowan's former partner, the man who'd stolen his engine design 3 years ago. Dated 6 months ago. Rowan read it twice, then 3 times. His chest went tight. Dorian had bought the stolen design, paid Rowan's former partner $2 million for the rights, and then he'd brought it to Avalon, presenting it as his own discovery. The engine Rowan had fixed wasn't just based on his design. It was his design. Stolen twice. Once by his partner, once by Dorian. And now Rowan had proof. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He copied every file, every email, every piece of evidence that proved Dorian was a fraud. Then he called Marissa. She answered on the first ring. "Please tell me you have good news." "Better." "I have proof Dorian's been lying to you for 6 months." Silence. Then, "I'm listening." Rowan explained everything. The contract, the stolen design, the fabricated evidence Dorian had prepared to destroy him. When he finished, Marissa's voice was ice. "Send me everything. Now." He did. 5 minutes later, his phone rang again. Marissa's voice was different now, sharp, focused. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting, tonight. Can you present the engine by midnight?" Rowan looked at the screen. The calibration algorithm was 70% complete. He had 6 hours left. "Yes." "Then do it. And Rowan, bring your daughter. I want the board to see exactly who they're dealing with." She hung up. Rowan turned back to his console. His hands moved faster now. Code poured out of him like water from a broken dam. Every line perfect. Every sequence flawless. This wasn't just about fixing an engine anymore. This was about justice. 2 hours later, the algorithm was done. Rowan ran the final diagnostic tests. The engine's virtual model appeared on screen, rotating, glowing, perfect. He initiated the calibration sequence. Numbers scrolled, the system processed. And then, green lights across the board. Every single metric in optimal range. The engine was ready. Ivy had fallen asleep in her chair, Rabbit clutched tight. Rowan scooped her up gently, careful not to wake her. She stirred, murmuring something about ice cream, then settled against his chest. He carried her to the executive boardroom. Security let them through. Inside, the board had already gathered, 12 people in expensive suits, looking tired and annoyed at being called in at 11 p.m. Marissa stood at the head of the table. When she saw Rowan carrying Ivy, something in her expression softened. "Gentlemen," she said, "we have a situation." She explained everything: Dorian's theft, the sabotage, the fabricated evidence. The board members' expressions shifted from annoyed to shocked to furious. Then Marissa turned to Rowan. "Show them." He set Ivy down gently on a chair near the wall, then walked to the main display, pulled up the engine simulation, started the ignition sequence. The virtual engine roared to life. Performance metrics appeared: fuel efficiency 45% above standard, emissions reduced by 30%, power output increased by 20%. One board member leaned forward. "That's impossible." "It's not," Rowan said quietly, "because I designed this engine 3 years ago, and tonight I finished what I started." The room went silent. Then the boardroom door burst open. Dorian stood in the doorway, disheveled, wild-eyed, desperate. "Don't listen to him. He's lying. He's a fraud. You're fired," Marissa said. Her voice was calm, final. Dorian's face went white. "You can't." "I can, and I just did. Security will escort you out. If you resist, we'll press charges for corporate espionage and theft." 2 security guards appeared behind Dorian. He looked around the room, searching for allies. Found none. His eyes landed on Rowan. For a moment, pure hatred burned there. Then he was gone, dragged backward through the door, shouting legal threats that no one listened to. The door closed. Silence. Then one of the board members started clapping. Slow at first, then faster. Others joined. Soon the entire room was applauding, not for the engine, for the man who'd refused to quit. The sun rose over Atlanta, painting the glass towers gold. Rowan stood in Marissa's office, exhausted, running on caffeine and adrenaline. Ivy sat on the leather couch, finally awake, eating a breakfast sandwich one of the assistants had brought her. Marissa leaned against her desk, arms crossed. The board voted, unanimously. You're now Chief Engineering Officer, full equity package. Your name goes on every patent related to that engine. Rowan's throat tightened. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. There's more. She pulled up a document on her tablet. We ran a full audit of Dorian's activities. Turns out he's been stealing designs for years, not just yours. We've identified at least 6 other engineers whose work he plagiarized. What happens to them? We're reaching out, offering restitution, jobs if they want them, and we're making sure Dorian never works in this industry again. Rowan nodded. Justice? Real justice. Not the kind that came from the courtrooms and lawyers he couldn't afford, but the kind that came from standing up, from refusing to stay invisible. There's something else, Marissa said. She walked to the window, looking out at the city. That marriage bet. Rowan's heart skipped. You said you weren't holding me to it. I'm not. She turned, a small smile playing at her lips. But I am asking if you'd like to have dinner sometime. No bets, no contracts, just 2 people who've been through something intense together. Rowan blinked. He hadn't expected that, hadn't even considered it. His life had been survival mode for so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to think about anything else. He glanced at Ivy. She was watching them, sandwich forgotten, eyes bright with curiosity. Can I think about it? He asked. Marissa's smile widened. Take your time. 3 days later, Rowan stood in his new office, glass walls, city view, his name on the door. His team had tripled in size. Engineers who'd ignored him last week now asked for his input on every project. But the best part was the schedule, 9 to 5. No late nights, no missed pickups. He arrived at Ivy's school at 3:30 sharp. She ran out, backpack bouncing, and threw her arms around him. You made it, she said. I'll always make it, he promised. And this time, he meant it. They drove home, not to the tiny apartment with thin walls, but to a new place. 2 bedrooms, heat that worked, a kitchen table where they could eat dinner together. That night, after Ivy went to bed, Rowan sat on the couch, staring at his phone. Marissa's number was saved in his contacts. He could call, ask about dinner, take a step towards something that felt terrifyingly like hope. But before he could decide, his phone rang. An unknown number. He answered. Hello? Mr. Hale? A woman's voice, professional, careful. My name is Janelle Bradford. I'm an engineer in Texas. I heard about what happened with Dorian Vale, and I think he stole my work too. Rowan sat up straighter. Tell me everything. She did. And as she talked, Rowan realized something. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every engineer who'd been silenced, every person who'd been told they didn't matter. By the time the call ended, Rowan had made a decision. He was going to help them, all of them. 6 months later, Avalon Dynamics launched the most efficient engine in automotive history. The press called it revolutionary. Investors called it a gold mine. Engineers called it impossible. Rowan called it justice. He stood on stage at the launch event, Marissa beside him, cameras flashing. Behind them, a massive screen displayed the engine's specs, and at the bottom, in bold letters, designed by Rowan Hale, his name, his work, finally recognized. In the front row, Ivy sat with her grandmother, clapping louder than anyone else. She wore a dress she'd picked out herself, bright yellow, because she said it matched her daddy's smile. After the presentation, after the interviews and handshakes and congratulations, Rowan found Marissa in the hallway. She was alone, checking her phone, her usual armor of confidence slightly cracked. Hell of a day, he said. She looked up, smiling. Hell of a 6 months. They'd worked together closely since that night in the boardroom. Late meetings, strategy sessions. Slowly, carefully, they'd become something Rowan hadn't expected. Friends, maybe more. About that dinner, he said, her eyebrows raised. Took you long enough. I'm a single dad. I move slow. I noticed. She stepped closer. Friday night, there's a place downtown, Italian. Ivy can come too if you want. Rowan's chest felt warm, light. She'd like that. Good. Marissa's hand brushed his, just briefly, but it was enough. They walked back to the event together, and for the first time in 3 years, Rowan felt like he was exactly where he belonged. But life has a funny way of keeping things interesting. As they re-entered the ballroom, an assistant approached Marissa, whispering urgently. Her expression changed, hardened. "What's wrong?" Rowan asked. She showed him her phone, an email from Dorian. Subject line: "You haven't seen the last of me." The message was short, threatening, promised legal battles and corporate warfare, and revenge that would make the last 6 months look like a warm-up. Rowan read it twice. Then he looked at Marissa. "We beat him once?" "We did. We'll beat him again." She smiled, fierce, determined. "Damn right we will." They deleted the email, walked back into the celebration. And as Rowan scooped Ivy into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed, he realized something. He'd spent 3 years hiding, surviving, protecting what little he had left. But now he was ready to fight. For his daughter, for his future, for every person who'd been told they didn't matter, and he wasn't fighting alone anymore. Marissa caught his eye across the room, raised her glass in a silent toast. Rowan raised his back. Neither of them knew what Dorian was planning, what battles lay ahead, what storms were gathering on the horizon. But they knew one thing for certain. This story, Rowan's story, Ivy's story, Marissa's story, was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And fate wasn't done with them yet, not by a long shot. What would you do if someone stole your life's work and left you with nothing? Drop a comment below, sharing your thoughts on Rowan's journey. Your story might inspire someone else who's fighting their own battle. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next chapter of this story is coming soon. And you won't want to miss what happens when Dorian makes his next move. Hit that like button if you believe second chances are worth fighting for, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that their gifts still matter, no matter how long they've been hidden. See you in the next one.